it's almost like a survival mechanism. Like
Mhm.
I have to hold on to what is positive and what's going to get me through this day. I have to look forward or everything is going to drag me down.
Welcome back to the Happiness and Progress podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. Hey, did you know I have a Hip Habits workbook? It is filled with happiness and progress habits, 6 months of weekly habits, everything from physical wellness to relationships to financial wellness and mindset. You'll find so many different things to bring into your life to help improve your quality of life. I want to introduce you to today's guest, Samantha Russell. She is a 3-time cancer survivor, an advocate, and a content creator. She shares her unique experience as a cancer survivor and double ostomate online. By sharing her story, she's hoping to raise awareness and encourage self-love and healing for others. And that's exactly what we talk about today. We talk about her journey and how important self-love has been in this journey and how she has been able to ground herself in self-love and continue to come back to that feeling of love for herself. We also talk about finding joy in small things, what kept her fighting through her first, second, and third diagnosis, and how her plans and goals for the future have changed over the last 6 years. All that and a lot more. So let's get to it. Samantha, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I've been hearing about this battle that you've been going through for the last 3 years. Is it 3 years or
Um,
more?
I mean, altogether, it's been 6 years.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So tell me about how old you were when you first learned that you had cervical cancer.
26, 27.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was, yeah, I was pretty young. It was a few months after my husband and I got married.
Oh,
And yeah, I was having some symptoms. At the time, I didn't know were symptoms of cervical cancer.
you're 26. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's the last thing on my mind, especially just being married. Um, and it's that phase in your life where you're like getting your career going, the future is bright. Um, yeah, and unfortunately at that point I was diagnosed with I believe it was 1B. It's all been such a whirlwind, so the
Mm-hmm.
details are a little fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah,
What
it was
was it like getting that diagnosis at that time in your life? Like not only being young, but also in that newlywed bliss.
yeah, just absolutely crushing. You have so much to look forward to,
Mm-hmm.
and it honestly felt like our future was sort of ripped away from us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the treatment for cervical cancer, the treatment I had back then was to have a hysterectomy. And so, that affects my fertility, and we kind of felt blindsided, um, just to be so excited for the future and have everything completely change.
What did that do to your relationship?
I think it was hard. It's
Yeah.
definitely a new dimension we have to figure out. Ironically enough, it made us stronger. I think it really was, going through something like this with a partner. It kind of gives you that feeling of like us against the world, because you're the only two that see the nitty gritty of it all, and you really experience it together. And so you're bonded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I noticed on your Instagram page, when you talk about the fight, your fight, you always say, we've been fighting this so hard. We've been fighting. And I assume you're talking about your husband?
Yes, yes. Um, it very much is a we, because,
Mm-hmm.
while I'm the one going through treatment and, feeling terrible and feeling sick, he's the one taking care of me, and he's the one having to lift me up. And encouraging me to keep going. It's just as much a fight for him as much as it is for me. It may look
Mhm.
very different, but yeah, shout out to all the caregivers out there because it is a fight of their own, really and truly.
Mhm. When you were first diagnosed, did you have any and going through a hysterectomy at 26 years old, did you have any concerns about that relationship and whether it was gonna make it and whether he was gonna stick around and all
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, that was my number one concern, going into this because, sure, it's devastating to me as a woman, but I have a partner here who, especially like in society and in the phase of life we were in, we were, you know, very much looking forward to starting a family. And is he going to want to stick around? And it absolutely took a toll on, um, how I felt about my femininity, how I felt
Mm,
about my role as a wife. But I really lucked out, and there has not been a moment when my husband has ever made me feel like he wasn't in this with me
mm,
together. Um, I mean, it sounds silly, but there have been, some times where I'm like, I would understand,
mhm,
if this wasn't something you wanted to be a part of, but he is just has been right there by my side through every single twist and turn. And I think through that has really again solidified like our love for each other and our bond, our loyalty to each other because we're the two people going through this.
mhm. W As a newlywed, to see that, dedication to you and that love for you and that the support even when you feel like, "Okay, you can go, I understand." What did that mean for you?
um I mean, it's made our love grow. I
Mm,
know that sounds very corny, but it is these hardships that force individuals, couples, families to really challenge yourself and dig deep and figure out exactly who you are and what you want.
mhm,
It just sort of turns your whole world upside down and really changes your perspective on everything.
mhm. You talked about getting that diagnosis when you were 26. You fought it. Did you beat it initially and then
Yeah,
okay, tell me a
yeah.
little pick up there and what it was like in this second and third diagnosis.
Yeah, so at that point, um, as it was told to me by my doctor at the time, we had caught it early. And although the treatment was a big deal to me in the grand scheme of treatment for cervical cancer, it was sort of like the first initial phase. So we were ready to move on with our life. Shortly after that, like I was just talking about, we were really considering and evaluating what we were doing, as far as our careers went, what we wanted to experience in our lifetime. And we decided to travel for a few months. Um, and that experience in itself was another moment of bonding and just pursuing what was authentic to ourselves.
Mm,
Um, a sort of like self discovery too, because it's just the two of us out into the world and
mhm,
rolling with the punches and figuring it out. And I really believe that that set us up for what was to come without us even knowing. Um, Once we got home in 2018, it was a few months after that. We were, trying to settle back into our conventional life. And I started having symptoms again.
mm,
Um, Unfortunately, the doctor at the time didn't take me seriously, which I know is an issue for a lot of women.
Mhm.
And eventually, I was re-diagnosed for the second time. You know, that was particularly devastating because here we are thinking, like, that is over with, we can move on, that's an old chapter, and you just kind of get sucked back in.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the following year in 2019, I spent all in treatment. I did chemo, radiation, I had more surgeries, immunotherapy. I it was the gamut of cancer treatments. Um, with all that though, we finished off the year and again thought everything was good. I had a clear scan.
Mhm.
We were looking forward to everything. And then came 2020, which was as for everyone, an
Mhm.
experience in itself. But yeah, around March, around the time that all the chaos was starting, I was diagnosed
Ugh.
the last time. Um, and that was just terrifying, with everything going on in the world. And at the same time, um, just all of the uncertainty really took a toll on us.
Mhm. When I look through your Instagram, it looks so positive that you have this really positive outlook and beautiful perspective on life. How was it hard to hold on to that when you were getting the second and third diagnosis of what you already thought?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to preface it with I don't feel like that all the time.
Mhm.
Um, it's almost like a survival mechanism. Like
Mhm.
I have to hold on to what is positive and what's going to get me through this day. I have to look forward or everything is going to drag me down.
Mhm.
Because I think when you're in I memean really anyone who goes through anything difficult, like when you're in it, it feels like everything is terrible. Like you can't catch a break and it's so easy to get lost in that mindset. So in a way it's what has gotten me through is just to hang on to every tiny little victory, every little silver lining. Um, and that has really shaped, as you said, my perspective on life too.
I'm glad you said that because I think sometimes people start to then shame themselves because they're not being positive, and that just adds another layer of something that you don't need to deal with when you're going
It
through
does.
something really hard.
Mhm.
Is there a specific instance that you remember holding on to that tiny silver lining or the tiny piece of joy?
Um, I mean, it sounds really simple, but I can say that the sort of obvious but simple but huge thing that I hold on to every single day is that I'm alive.
Mm. Mhm.
I have been in many situations where I couldn't count on the next couple of months and have had to go through some things that I don't even want to remember. Um, just that gratitude of simply being here has is the I think the foundation of that positivity and that perspective, and
Mhm.
everything else is a work in progress, but that's something that every single day that I get to wake up and I get to live a full life is truly a blessing.
Mhm. And oh my gosh, we take that for granted.
We
We
do.
really take that for granted.
Mhm.
You're talking a lot about your perspective. How has your perspective changed from these last 6 years when you began this fight to now?
Oh my goodness. I'd probably be sitting here talking for hours if I went through like every single thing. Um, I mean, it's definitely forced us to mature really
Mhm,
quickly
mhm,
because, we're in our mid-20s and, you think you know what you want and you have all of these goals and there's nothing wrong with that. Career oriented goals or financial and everything. I think that's what excuse me, what we were really focused on. Once all of this happened, it allowed us to take a step back and instead ask ourselves, like, what kind of relationships do we want to have in our life? What kind of relationships do we want to have with each other? What kind of experiences do we want to have? Um, and I guess just thinking about the quote unquote smaller things.
mhm, mhm.
Uh,
The things that are lasting.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. The things that are real,
Mhm,
that are just gonna be constant in your life. From there, I've really learned. Both of us have learned to be really true to ourselves and not, think so much about the pressure of everyone else's expectations or
mm,
um, do these people like me? Um, Not to say that like that's completely out of my mind, but you know, going through this will remind me that that's not important. If I'm doing good things and I'm happy with myself, and that's what matters.
mhm. Yeah. That's a hard lesson to learn, and you earned that lesson. What
Yeah,
what what have you learned about your own strength?
that it is stronger than I could ever imagine. And I think that that goes for anybody. Um, yeah, it's just you never really know. You never can really imagine what going through something traumatic, cancer treatment or whatever it may be, what you're capable of. But when push comes to shove, you you are a powerful being, and I mean, there's so many other factors that go into that, but I think a lot to just tap into that belief in yourself, that confidence, and ultimately that love that you have for yourself to say
Mm,
like, no, you deserve whatever's ahead of you, and you deserve to be here. You deserve to give it all you have. Um,
mm,
that has been like life changing for me.
mhm. We've kind of talked about how this ebbs and flows, our ability to do some of this a little better than other days. How did you keep yourself, and do you keep yourself grounded in that? I deserve to be here. I love myself. How do you keep yourself going back to that?
Yeah. Well, I would be lying if I. Well, we did talk about the ebbs and flows, and I know that I am strong, but for anyone that doesn't feel like that, a lot of the times, I think it's the same kind of thing. You accept it for what it is. You don't try to push it away. You love yourself enough to be like, hey, this feeling sucks, but I'm bringing it with me and I'm going to allow it to make me understand myself better and just I don't know, make you grow.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
think that's really the only I've done the denying the feelings and I've done the being like doing the opposite and completely wallowing in them and um, thanks to my therapist, I really learned how to manage that in a healthy way um, and make it like a part of me and grow parts of me.
mhm, I love that. I like to say that life is just a practice, and all of this is just a practice, and And I think you're doing an exceptional job at that.
Well, thank you.
One of the things that I love that you post on Instagram is these small little moments of joy. Tell me a little bit about finding those small little moments of joy and what that is.
It's anything you want it to be, really. And everyone's different. So if it's cooking a really good meal for yourself, or um, that one thing at work that you didn't think was going to turn out, but it did and it was fine. Celebrate that. I think we get caught up in how everything looks to everyone else. But like how does it look to you? How does it make
Mm,
you feel? And just like celebrate it because you did that, and the small things matter.
I think so much of it goes back to not living for other people's approval.
Yeah.
Live for your own approval.
Yes, very much so.
As you look back over the last 6 years, what do you feel like was the hardest part?
I mean, I'm just going to go back to that, loving myself through all of it.
Mm,
Um, with my last treatment, it involved a lot of like this huge surgery that really changed my body and changed my lifestyle. And of course, I felt like embarrassed and ashamed and like unfamiliar. And I would say that, yeah, that is the hardest thing, is to keep that belief in myself. Um, when everything around me is telling me no, or everything around me is hard and kind of knocking me down, that would be the hardest thing, is getting back up and saying like, no, I'm going to push my way through this.
Are you talking about the ostomy bags?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that must be incredibly difficult to have to go through
Oh,
that as well.
it really has been. You know, I am so grateful to be here and appreciate that I am in the place that I am now. But like this recovery, I like to refer to it as like a rebirth, because it almost felt like I'm starting all over again. I'm well into my 30s, and all of a sudden, this is how you're going to do life now instead. Um, in the middle of a pandemic. So trying to figure that all out was disheartening. It's easy to get down on yourself. Uh, but as they say, time really heals. And the more I try to embrace the situation for what it is, good and bad, the better I was able to cope with it.
Hmm.
And same thing, as time went on, the more natural it felt and the more confident I got. And I'm still here, so I'm not gonna waste it on being miserable or upset about the things that have happened to me.
You're still here and you're here on this podcast sharing this story, impacting so many lives, impacting the lives around you, and this incredible light that you have. Like I can feel just talking to you
Um,
here, and our mutual friend Elizabeth has told me about. Um, so are you cancer free, or or no evidence of disease right now?
yeah, I
Awesome.
am.
How long has that been?
I It has been officially 2 years, I think, altogether since my surgery.
Wow.
Um, there have been a lot of scary moments where, at this point in this cancer experience, unfortunately, we take it, one thing at a time. And right here today, I am cancer free. I had a scan in June, and saw my doctor, and one of them said I'm the healthiest he's ever seen me.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been we're at a great point in our lives now, and we're just excited to tackle the future.
hmm When you look to the future now, does it look how are your goals and things you want to do different from in the first time you beat it, or maybe even the second time you beat it? Is there a difference?
Yes, huge difference. I think I was still in that phase of we got to have these things, I got to have this job at a certain age, I got to be making this amount of money, we want to have like a great big house. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with that. I think that's fantastic if that's your goal, but I for us, it really just brought us down to thinking about who we are, what do we want, again going back to like relationships. And I can say now, there are definitely things that we want to do, but our outlook is pretty much just open. Because
Mhm.
if anything, cancer has taught us is in a bad way, but also in a good way, that anything can happen at any time. And we've spent a lot of time making plans and having to throw them out the window.
Mhm.
So we've left the door open. We are excited for whatever's to come our way.
Mm. How does that feel to have that open outlook?
Freeing.
Yeah.
It's so easy to say like, well, we need to be like this and we need to have this, but it's given us so much freedom to just accept whatever is meant to be and let go of whatever's not meant to be and be okay with that.
Mhm. Mhm. It's hard to do, but it's very powerful when you can get to that spot.
Yes, it is really hard to do, but incredibly powerful because you've sort of just mastered the ebbs and flows of life. And
Mhm.
not to say that it's all you know unicorns and rainbows, but you get to a place where you're just going with the flow,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's okay.
Mhm. I like to ask all my guests this one last question, which is, what is your number one tip to finding more joy in the good, the bad, and the in between of life?
Um, Work on yourself, and that doesn't mean like criticizing yourself or you know running away from feelings that you don't want to have. It's just like really getting to know yourself and having unconditional love for yourself when you feel like crap, when you feel on top of the world, all of it, everything in between, because it's like you are the one that's there for you.
Mhm.
You deserve that. And yeah, I think people would be a lot happier if we all just embraced all of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And understand that we deserve that love from ourselves. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Samantha. She is such an incredibly strong and beautiful person. I love the light she brought to this conversation. And I, of course, have all of her information in show notes. And I want to thank you for being here on Happiness and Progress.